When you look at this picture, what do you see? Some people might see two people looking at each other. Another set of eyes might see a goblet or something used to drink from. I bet you if I told you before you looked at this picture that it was two faces looking at each other, that would have been the first thing you saw, and it would have made the most sense to you. But if I would have told you it was a cup or a goblet, and that was the first thing I told you before you looked at it, I'm sure that would have been the first thing you noticed, and it would have made the most sense to you. You know, two people can look at the same information and come to different conclusions. And this comes natural. This also happens when we look at the Grand Canyon. When we look at the Grand Canyon, we've been told for years and years that the Grand Canyon is coming from millions and millions of years of erosion of maybe this small river going through it. But if you were to be told that this is actually the after effect of a huge flood that actually flooded the whole earth and causes damage, I'm sure it would make just as much sense, and you'd be able to see it the same way. You know, the reason that we take on these ideas that have been shoved to us since we've been in school is because evolution is the leading theory. And I think we forget what this word theory means. The definition of theory is a supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on the general principles independent of the thing to be explained. You know, theory is simply somebody's idea. It's simply somebody's guess. And we forget this and we start to take it on as fact. And the reason why so many people put it as fact is because they learn it at school. And when you learn something in school, you believe that it's a fact and that it can't be proven wrong. But the truth is, if you're in college or if you're in school, you have to learn the theory of evolution. It's a theory, but you have to learn it because it is what so much work has been put into already. So there's a lot of money that has been put into evolutionary science, and there's a lot of people who have already started teaching this, and there's people that have gotten degrees on this. So just imagine that you've learned this your whole life and you've gotten degrees on it and you've been teaching people, and then you run into some information that shows you that it's not true. Do you think you'd be able to take this very easily, or do you think you would take it at all? There's so many so-called scientists that do not accept information that contradicts the theory of evolution. And there's a whole lot of information that comes out that affects the theory of evolution in a negative way. There's a lot of information of footprints found of humans with dinosaur footprints, but nobody wants to talk about this. They'll brush this stuff under the rug. There also has been a lot of different fossils that have been found that are still found today that cannot be explained in the time periods that they try to put them in the so-called geologic column, which is completely man-made. The geologic column is not something that really exists. It's just simply somebody's interpretation of the evidence. So the evidence is different layers of rock that we see in the earth, and the interpretation that the evolutionists get is that these different layers of rock are different ages. But there's no way to really know that. This is just their interpretation. And by that interpretation, they set up their whole science. They set up everything that they believe in, and they set up their dating methods and everything off this interpretation of rock layers being different ages. But if we are to follow what the Bible told us, that there was a great flood, then these rock layers wouldn't be different ages. It would simply be an effect of the flood. In the Bible, the flood is not just simply rain. The Bible tells us that the fountains of the deep broke open. we see evidence of this, and these are called fault lines, and these are the breaking up of the earth, and there's still evidence of the breaking up of the earth. And this is why we still have earthquakes, and we have continental drifts. This shows us that there was a big breaking of the earth at one point. So the Bible tells us that the fountains of the deep broke open, and it also said it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. So when these fountains broke open, this would cause a whole lot of earthquakes and other things, other natural disasters that we still have effects from this day. And this would explain a lot of things. It would also explain why we have different layers of earth. If you are to grab a jar and mix it with different types of sediment, rocks, sand, dirt, water, and gravel, and you mix it up and set it down, it will automatically lay into different layers. This is the same way that the earth looks. You have different species of animals in different layers. In the bottom layers, you have the things that were already at the bottom, things that weren't too smart, weren't able to swim. Things that were already at the bottom will be buried first in a great flood. Then rising up, you have your land-dwelling mammals, and then after this you have the birds. This would be the exact same order. So things would be drowned in a flood. Also, people don't believe that humans used to live with dinosaurs, but because we see them buried in different areas. But just like today, if we were to have another great flood, would you see a lot of people buried with a whole bunch of lions and monkeys and things that are in the jungle? No, because we have different ecosystems and we live in different areas. So the reason why you don't see a whole bunch of humans buried with dinosaurs is because just like at that time, it's the same as this time. Dinosaurs were unearthed with humans, but were in different areas. It wouldn't be smart for people to be living around a bunch of dinosaurs. So of course they would have their own ecosystems and own areas where they would live. All through history, you have every civilization and every culture with different stories about dragons, people that used to slay dragons. We have pictures of people that have pictures of dragons drawn on caves and drawn on pottery and different things. Do you think that every single one of these people just made these up in their mind? Or is it a possibility that there really were something called dragons? And maybe we just changed the name to them to dinosaurs later on. The Bible talks about dinosaurs. It also talks about creatures called the behemoth, which is told to us to have a tail like a cedar tree. There's no animal alive today or anything in the fossil record that has a tail like a cedar tree besides the dinosaur. Here are a few of the many scientists who were grown up in a secular way of thinking, but after seeing the information were honest enough to part ways with the peer review papers. And this is a hard thing to do, because if you're in this science world and you go against evolution, then you will lose your job. You can be kicked out of these schools, or you'll fail your classes because you don't go with the consensus of the rest of the evolutionary teachings. But here are a few doctors. Dr. Joachim Vedder, he is a medical doctor and a biologist. Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, he has a PhD in biology from Harvard. Remember, these are all creationists that believe in the account of the Bible, but have the same information as every other scientist. Dr. Steve Austin, he has a PhD in geology. Dr. Vernon R. Cups, he has a PhD in nuclear physics. What we have to understand, there's many more that I can name and go on and on. What we have to understand is that everyone has an agenda. I'll admit my agenda. I believe God is real. I believe that there's a heaven and a hell. And my agenda is to get people to wake up and realize that you can't believe everything that we've been taught for so many years. And that science And the answers that we're getting from most scientists that are secular is changing over and over. If you don't like the age of the earth, of what they say it is now, don't worry. About 10 years, you're going to have a completely new age of the earth. And 10 years after that, you'll have another new age of the earth. It's constantly changing. And what is the information that is changing? What does that mean? It means it's wrong, plain and simple. If the information you have is constantly changing, that means it is wrong. The Bible has stayed the same and it never will change. And science cannot contradict it, even though they try to. Even though they try to say that science doesn't match the Bible, it does. And the scientists I've just named in this long list, and I can put some links in the video of creation scientists that you can go check out. These people have matched the Bible. They have matched the genealogies of people, of where we've come from. They've also matched what we found in archaeology, and we found that everything matched it with the Bible perfectly. But the secular sources have an agenda. They want to keep evolution going because of all the money that's been put in it. They also do not like the idea of a God being in control. And though a lot of people might not even notice it because this is a subconscious type of thing that messes with people. But it's very hard for someone to accept that we have a God, and that we have a God that has judged the earth during this great flood, and that we have a God that is coming back to judge the earth again. And it's a deep down not wanting to believe that is really keeping people from it. 2 Peter 3:3-7. Above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, "Where is this coming he promised?" Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has from the beginning of creation. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the world of that time was destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. This verse here, verse 4, they will say, "Where's the coming he promised?" Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has from the beginning of creation. This verse here, that everything goes on as it has from the beginning, is what they call uniformitarianism. And that's their guess and their prediction, their theory, that everything is happening just the way it was in the past as it is now. And it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for everything to be happening just the way it has been. The sun is dying out. The earth is dying out. The second law of thermodynamics shows that everything is wearing down. There used to be bigger creatures. Everything used to be bigger. Dinosaurs were bigger. Bugs were bigger. Everything was different. So things aren't the same. Things have changed. And people don't want to recognize this. Remember, everyone has an agenda. And I hope that your agenda is searching for truth. Something to think about.
Do take good care of yourself.